Hello and welcome to the second season of the live interviews. I'm Jeff Leibow, co-founder and producer of the NF Hope Concerts, and your host for this season. The live interviews came out of the pandemic as we were transitioning to a virtual stage. We had the wonderful problem of having so many generous artists contributing their talents and their performances that we decided to try something new and create an interview series where we could get to know these artists a little bit better. Learn where they got their start in music, where they are right now, and even what their connection is to this cause. For the second season, we wanted to shift our gaze from the NF Hope concert stage to those behind the scenes. Speak to NF researchers and pharmaceutical companies who are researching NF and potentially creating new therapies, as well as those that are even looking at alternative treatments. We then wanted to speak to NF families. So we will have interviews with multi-generational NF families as well as panels of family members who will tell us a little bit about what the NF experience is really like. We have a lot of incredible people to speak to this season. So without further ado, this is the live interviews. If you were to take a random sample of the NF community and ask them what their greatest daily challenge is when it comes to living with neurofibromatosis, my guess is their answer would be pain. Pain is already a very complex issue. I'm sure everybody has gone to the doctor's office, been shown this graphic, and been asked to rate your pain. The problem is, pain isn't just about the physiological symptoms that lead to it. It's often a construct of both that and the way each individual patient perceives it. Throw in the complication that many NF patients don't respond to traditional pain therapies the way that the rest of the population does, and you have a significant problem for those living with neurofibromatosis. Luckily, there's somebody out there who's trying to help. In this episode of the live interviews, I get a chance to sit down with Dr. Frank Buono, who is not only researching ways to help the NF community deal with pain, he's also living it. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dr. Frank Buono. Dr. Buono is an associate research scientist in the Department of Psychiatry at Yale University. He's also a lecturer in the Department of Psychiatry there. He is co-director of the Neurocutaneous Clinic at Yale New Haven Hospital. He's also a board member of a number of organizations helping the NF community, including NF Northeast, NF Network is a national organization that we obviously know very well. And he has recently been added as a board liaison to Be the Difference Foundation, another wonderful NF organization out there helping the NF community. So welcome, Frank. I'll call you Frank for the sake of this interview. So you kind of have your own personal connection to NF. And instead of me telling about it, why don't you tell us exactly what that is?
Sure. So at the age of 9, I was diagnosed with neurofibromatosis type 2, now NF2-related schwannomatosis. Both my sister and I were told about this on the same day. My father had it before he passed, and my grandmother actually had it as well after genetic testing. So our family has been dealing with this disease for over 4 decades, at least. Of actively knowing this disease. So I am acutely aware of the disease and how it has affected myself, my sister, my father, my grandmother. And so, there's a little bit of a history.
Yeah. I mean, we'll also hear about the incredible work that you're doing researching NF, which I think makes you an incredible, valuable member of the research community here. But before I do that, you mentioned that you were diagnosed with what is now called NF2-related schwannomatosis. Now, there are 3 different types of NF. There's NF1, there's NF2-related schwannomatosis, and there's non-NF2-related schwannomatosis, which used to be known as schwannomatosis. Yeah. Why don't you just kind of, for those people who might not know the difference, kind of explain what the difference between the 3 types are?
It's a great question, Jeff. So NF1 presents with a host of different issues, anywhere from cafe au lait spots to percutaneous nerve tumors. There is a prevalence of NF1 is about 1 in 3,000, and the typical genetic sequencing is found on chromosome 17. uh, indicating that there is a little bit of distinct difference between NF1 and what now is called NF2 related schwannomatosis or non-NF2 related schwannomatosis. The NF2 related schwannomatosis typically presents with bilateral vestibular schwannomas or tumors around your auditory nerves, usually in your eighth cranial nerve. And that is typically found in chromosome 22. You can also have ependymomas on the spine or other meningioma lesions in the brain or other parts of the body. And then if you look at schwannomatosis, same genetic makeup as NF2 related schwannomatosis, and that's why there was a big change and push by the NF2 RAINS community last year and 2 years ago, actually. But it is typically related with schwannoma tumors, which are not necessarily bilateral in its nature, but 75% of individuals with schwannomatosis, we'll just call it for short, have chronic pain, and within that's very interesting to the separation between NF2 and schwannomatosis. Interestingly, there are, if you go back to NF1, a lot of physiological and psychological components that go along with the disease as well. There's a 30% chance of comorbidity with autism or co-occurrence with autism. There is a 40% likelihood of learning disabilities or dyslexia, and higher likelihood of lower IQ scores, by means of one standard deviation or more. And then you also have issues with ability for gait issues, bone thinning, bone bending components. And so there is, in all three diseases, those physiological and psychological components that can both affect the quality of life of the individual and the family itself.
Right. So, so knowing that, and and I know my daughter, as you know, has NF1, and even within the NF1 subgroup, their pain is also an issue. And so that kind of brings us to your interest in pain. So what is it that actually made you choose to study pain? Was it something about your own experience? Was it just your interest in how pain in NF is so specific compared to other pain? What is it that brought you there?
That's a great question. I think the first part of it is, myself, right? And so I had three tumors removed from T8 through T10 in 2012 because they were just causing me so much pain that I could not get up and move. And actually, this happened right in the middle of my doctoral dissertation, so I had to take a year and a half off of school for this process. But basically, the pain was so great that I had to have a surgery. After the surgery, I was up and moving the day or two after it, but unfortunately developed a post-operative infection and I was paralyzed from the hips down. And in order to do that, I took 7 and 8 months of intensive physical therapy and occupational therapy to learn how to walk again. And even with the walking, I was dealing with chronic pain consistently. And one of the things that caught me was that there are very few researchers or very few articles on chronic pain and the effect that it has both psychologically and physiologically on the body within NF. And so that is the reason that I took a shift in my career from going from a lot of issues with substance use and areas of that to moving specifically to chronic pain within rare diseases.
Okay, so specifically with NF, since that's kind of the focus of of the work that we do, the work that NF Network does, and some of the other organizations that you focused on. What is it about NF pain that is specifically challenging? And we can talk a little bit later about why NF pain might be different than regular pain, but what is it about NF pain that's challenging?
The problem with like NF pain, and specifically with NF1 pain, we'll talk about that first, is that it can happen anywhere in the body. And being that it's not necessarily a tumor that is causing the pain, it could be where the pain radiates to different arms. So you could have a tumor in your arm, but the pain is actually in your upper shoulder. And because of the way the tumors work or the pain works, we don't know if it's a typical pain, which is like a nociceptive pain or a neurological pain. And so it's very complex in the sense of, how to treat it. And typical pharmacological interventions like opioids have been shown to be not effective for NF1 pain, which is what the majority of individuals who have non-NF are using to combat their pain. So there are very few pharmacological agents that actually help in mitigating the pain. So that leaves us with other types of behavioral treatments or other alternative treatments that I typically employ in my strategy, in my clinic, and in my research.
So is something about the mechanism of pain in NF that makes it so difficult to treat with standard methods and even prescription medication?
Yeah, and that goes back to what I was saying. Yeah, it is very difficult to understand how the body affects pain because it's so individualized. So the pain, for your daughter would be completely different than the pain that I'm dealing with, on a day-to-day basis. And even though we have two different types of NF, if we had 5 different people in the same room with both NF1, all of their pains would be different. Some could be tingling, some could be stabbing pain, some could be throbbing pain, and all of those could be targeted at different regions. And so it is from a psychologist standpoint, it is very difficult to say, okay, well, we can pinpoint your pain, and then we can treat it. But that leaves the issue of how do we treat it appropriately? Because as I said before, opioids don't work. And what then people typically do is surgery, but surgery can leave another whole host of issues that come from the issue of phantom pain and other kinds of issues that result in the individual not actually having reduction of pain, but actually increasing of the pain in those specific areas. So things that I typically employ are cognitive behavioral therapy, acceptance commitment therapy, which are third wave psychotherapies to help reduce or mitigate the pain in conjunction with some yoga or some qigong or some type of physical component which can be minimized based on the individual's physical necessary needs or what they can or cannot do.
Okay, so we kind of dove ahead a little bit about what are some of the ways to manage this pain, but you said something that made me curious, and it's not even a question that I wrote, is that I would imagine with pain there is the cause of the pain, which is already challenging to focus on with NF patients, but then there's also the perception of pain. Two people with identical pain in any kind of measurable sense may feel differently simply because of their ability to handle that pain for whatever psychological reasons there are. Do NF patients have any sort of additional challenges when it comes to mental health and facing the challenge of pain?
Yeah, it's sometimes, it's hard to believe that some doctors actually don't believe that their pain is real, and they will not. And patients have reported to me in both, a clinic setting and in a research setting, that they have purposely lied to their doctor to lower their pain thresholds or their pain scores because of previous examples of where they've talked to doctors and they said, no, your pain's not really a 10. You're not really in, that much pain, and so that issue is a constant battle of within the patient, and that's scary on its own self.
Right. Yeah. You kind of touched a little bit on some of the ways that you offer both traditional and alternative solutions when it comes to managing pain. Not everybody has the opportunity to come to your clinic to get that help. So tell us a little about what some of those options are again, and maybe dive a little bit into why, especially some of the alternative options, are so helpful.
Yeah. So, yes, obviously you don't have to come to Yale to get your care and your treatment, because there are other fantastic organizations and clinics out there in the country. One thing that I would definitely advocate for is finding a good therapist who knows either cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance commitment therapy. These types of therapies have been shown to have preliminary efficacy. By efficacy, I mean, it's been shown in research to be effective to reduce chronic pain. There are specific protocols in place to help reduce the chronic pain. And things like being mindful of it, being accepting of the pain. It sounds wacky, it sounds a little crazy, but it actually does work. You think about, from an example of, if you drive to, home from work and you see McDonald's, and you think, oh, well, I want a cheeseburger because, I've seen enough McDonald's ads and I want a cheeseburger. But if you don't go to the McDonald's and you see it and you understand that, oh, that feeling, that thought that came in my head is just a thought, and you accept that it's just a thought, then you can control their pain in the similar way.
Right.
Oh, I'm in pain. I can understand it. I know what's going to happen. And that's what a lot of people who are with NF are doing naturally by themselves without even getting proper therapy for it, because that's the only solution that they have been using.
Right. I think there's quite a bit to be said for compensation, whether it be physical, whether it be as a pain management tool, known or unknown. And I think it's kind of like, the runner that trains themselves. You could either sit and think, I've got, 12 and a half more miles of a half marathon and struggle all the way through, or you could sort of accept that that's where you are, and not let focusing on it intensify the feeling. The same is probably true with pain. So in addition to some of the ways to manage pain, are there any tools that people can grab or join, or their apps or anything like that some of the NF community can do? And by the way, for those of you who are watching, we'll put links to any potential tools in the description below. So definitely make sure that you check that out. So go ahead and tell me.
Yeah. So one of the things that I can plug is my mobile app that I've created for chronic pain, specifically for NF chronic pain. It's called I Can Cope. It's a little emoji dude who does, just an evaluation of your pain on a day-to-day basis, and says, and what it does is it measures your pain. It provides you recommendations of what to do for your pain, and it gives you articles to read specifically about NF, about how to deal with chronic pain. So that's one thing. I know there is a website run through MGH. I believe Ethan Lester has been doing some work on that, for management of pain. And so it's for both children and adults. You can do that. I can drop a link to you or show you the link in a little bit.
Perfect.
Otherwise, there are workbooks. Steve Hayes out of University of Nevada, Reno, has a fantastic workbook called "Get Out of My Head." It is a fantastic workbook to talk about pain and management of pain. I will, and then I have a couple of other colleagues who have written adolescent textbooks or workbooks to go through as well, and I can provide those resources for you guys just on on links. One would be Dr. Rachel Zoffness. She's based out of University of California, San Francisco. She's written 2 or 3 textbooks on chronic pain management as well.
Okay, that's great. So, I mean, we've kind of covered where your interest in this came from. We talked a little bit about specifically NF pain and NF and some of the management tools that are out there. Is there anything else that we didn't cover that you think somebody watching who's dealing with chronic pain or has a family member who's dealing with NF pain that's chronic? Is anything you'd like to add that we didn't touch on?
Yeah, there's a couple things I'd like to talk about. One is advocacy. And how important it is to be an advocate of yourself or advocate of a loved one. And it is not talked about enough because you are your own, if you are, over 18, in essence, you are your own advocate. Right. And you need to tell your provider what is going on.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're not mind readers. We can't, we can't just look at your brain without, connect you to some signal device, to really understand what's going on. And in order to that, you just need to tell us, you need to talk.
Right.
That's one thing. Second thing is that, not everyone's going to like cognitive behavioral therapy or acceptance commitment therapy. And there are other alternatives to doing that. You can try, spiritual groups. You can try talking to your friends, doing coffee hour, finding other individuals with NF. That's what the other NF organizations, NF Network, NF Northeast can do is you get those connections between other individuals with NF, and you can talk and you can get that community support because there's not many of us around. In the United States alone, if you combine NF, all the NFs together, you're talking maybe 130,000, 140,000 total. So, it's always good to talk. This is from a psychologist, so we're going to always talk about.
No, I mean, as a parent, there's so many reasons that talking to and being a part of a community are important. It's not just about managing pain. It's very much about not feeling like you're in an island, which is so easy to do when you're dealing with a rare disease, whether personally or a family member or a child. These are the idea of community and getting out and talking and seeing people is important for a lot of reasons, but certainly when it comes to something specific, like what kind of pain experience have you had? Oh, I've had that too. And there, just that recognition of not being the only one can often be, I would imagine, very therapeutic.
I'll give you an example. I was doing a focus group for a research study, and I had one lady from South Carolina, one lady from Montana on the call. Never met each other before, never had any connection to most NF organizations. And they both had similar types of pain. Both were middle-aged, and they just started talking to each other within the focus group about and bonding together. And by doing that, I actually got an email from one of them a couple of days ago saying that they have become like great friends now. They have seen each other twice in person, but that is so psychologically empowering for those individuals, and it can actually help with chronic pain. And so, you have that presence of mind that an individual who is with you in that struggle that is what you were talking about. And I think that is so needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would say one last thing about advocacy too is I've my wife and I have 12 years of being an advocate for our child, and we're getting to the point where we need to impart that knowledge onto her. And I think fear of the disorder and fear of any kind of stigma associated with it is probably the biggest barrier that I see a lot of people facing when it comes to being an advocate for your child and teaching them to be an advocate for themselves. I know many people who have children in their teens who have never been told that they have a disorder, and they're going to be ill-equipped until they face that to deal with it. But if any, I would say outside of the discussion of pain, the NF Hope Concerts and NF Network or other organizations like NF Northeast are here to help those people living with NF. And if there's any questions about how to be an advocate for yourself, how to get the treatments, how to discuss pain with your doctor, I think these are all things that, whether reaching out to us and going through you, Dr. Buono, or Frank, right. Or going to an organization near you, learning how to be an advocate and making sure your children are if that's who you're dealing with, are equipped to become their own advocate is incredibly important, not just for management of pain.
And I always tell this to my patients or whoever, that if a doctor does not provide you with a response that you need, or that is not listening to you, there are other doctors out there.
True. Yeah.
And one will listen.
Yeah.
And so if you have any questions, I'm always, I tell a lot of my patients, a lot of my junior faculty that work under me, if you have a question, you email me at 1:30 in the morning. I'll probably get back to you by 1:35.
That's true.
So,
yeah.
Go on.
No, go ahead. You finish what you were saying.
The one other thing I wanted to touch back and circle back to what you were saying is that alternative treatments are out there as well. And, certain things like just yoga or certain things like heating pads can be, helpful. Qigong has been shown to be effective in other populations. In juvenile idiopathic arthritis, Qigong is one of the most preferred methods of helpful for kids. So, it's individualistic. It's what, find something that is important to you that you want to try and do it. It might not be, perfect for, your partner or another one else, but at least you're going to be doing something to help you mitigate or try to reduce that reduction of pain.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for taking the time. It was a great half hour, and I have a feeling that would we continue the questions and the discussion, we would be here 2 hours from now. So maybe there's a follow-on conversation, a broader talk about advocacy and how to become a better advocate for yourself, whether for pain or anything else, that we can continue. And maybe it'll be the finale of this season. Who knows? But thank you for taking the time. I know you're busy. Thank you for the work you do. We know that it is very personally motivated and inspired. But as with any of the big changes that happen in the NF community, I think that's kind of where it starts, is parents and people living with NF that are trying to make the real big change. And if you're watching, this will air right after the NF Hope concert. So there's still ways to give if you want to help. Make sure that maybe there is resources for new families trying to figure out how to deal with an NF diagnosis and potentially any pain that comes along with it. So please feel free to follow the links down below, follow us on social media, and if you'd like to make a contribution, we'll make sure that there's a link for that as well. Dr. Buono, Frank, thank you so much for being a part of today's episode. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for visiting us on this episode of the Live Interviews. Have a great day.